2012, Robert Pattinson is at the peak of fame. His face doesn't leave the covers of the most popular magazines. He is called the highest-paid British actor, and fans lay real sieges at every hotel or venue where he appears. At 23, he is already being placed alongside Leonardo DiCaprio and other Hollywood stars. It would seem that life has worked out, all doors are open to him. His career is rapidly gaining momentum. But behind this facade, there was something else. Hollywood producers didn't see him as a serious actor. To them, he was just another pretty face, convenient for another teenage romantic melodrama. They perceived him more as a marketing product than as an artist capable of taking on complex roles. The irony was that the very role that brought him worldwide fame almost destroyed his career. Twilight made him an idol of millions, but at the same time branded him a one-role actor. After the franchise finale, Pattinson found himself at a crossroads. Ahead of him lay years of struggle for the right to be taken seriously. Since childhood, Robert had been a withdrawn boy who dreamed not of acting, but of music. Teachers openly told him that he wasn't made for the stage and even discouraged him from joining the drama club. Only thanks to his mother did he get his first contract with a modeling agency, and later, at his father's insistence, he joined a local theater troupe. But even there, he felt like an outsider. His restraint, shyness, and sense of inferiority for a long time kept him from opening up. His first steps in big cinema also turned out to be unsuccessful. Scenes with him were cut, and he found out about it right at the premieres, where he had invited his family. Yet it was precisely these failures that opened the next doors for him. This is how the role of Cedric Diggory in the fourth Harry Potter appeared, which for the first time made his name known in Hollywood. But the real turning point happened at the casting for Twilight. Having ended up at the audition almost by accident, he instantly found himself at the center of a storm of criticism. Fans of the book staged entire campaigns against him, signed petitions, demanded the actor's replacement. But when the first trailers came out, the mood changed, and with the release of the film itself, his life was radically turned upside down. Pattinson became a star overnight. He was adored, but at the same time, this fame turned into a burden. Paparazzi followed him around the clock, and the industry seemed to fix the label of eternal vampire on him. It would seem he had everything young actors dream of in abundance: money, popularity, recognition. But he did not want to remain in viewers' memories only as the sparkling-in-the-sun Edward Cullen. He needed something more, something real. And to prove this to the world, he made a move that for most stars would have seemed like career suicide. After the tremendous success of Twilight, it seemed that Pattinson had no reason to worry. Hundreds of millions of dollars at the box office, fan frenzy, magazine covers, and contracts for any advertising campaign. But the real problem lay elsewhere. Hollywood didn't see him as an actor. He was considered perfect for the image of a romantic hero, but nothing more. For the studios, he was just a handsome face that sold tickets, but incapable of carrying a complex, dramatic role. The paradox was that the more popularity the franchise brought him, the stronger the label of teen vampire stuck to him. Pattinson understood this perfectly well. He joked in interviews, mocked the plot inconsistencies of Twilight, and tried to distance himself from the character of Edward. And every time he tried to move on, he was offered the same roles, copies of Edward, only with different names. It was a true dead end. In any other case, an actor might have lived comfortably on the wave of fame, signing dozens of identical contracts. But Pattinson refused the easy path. He decided to break the stereotypes. His plan was risky and even desperate: to go into independent cinema. For a global superstar, this looked like career suicide. After all, art house directors usually don't invite actors who have just earned millions on a franchise. What they need is sincerity, authenticity, and the absence of pretension. But Pattinson found a way. He started seeking out the directors who interested him and offering himself for their projects. His criteria came down to two simple rules. First, the role had to be as opposite to the image of Edward Cullen as possible. The greater the transformation, the more interesting. Second, he had to genuinely like the director. It didn't matter whether it was a famous master or the creator of low-budget films. What mattered was that there was something alive, something real in their style. Sometimes he would agree to a role without even reading the script, simply because he respected the filmmaker's work. That's how he ended up in David Cronenberg's Cosmopolis. There he played a cold, detached millionaire whose inner emptiness contrasted with all his luxury. Then came roles with Werner Herzog, Queen of the Desert, Anton Corbijn, Life, as well as several smaller appearances with independent directors. And although none of these films brought in huge box office returns, Pattinson was gradually reshaping his image. But the real breakthrough came later. First, he surprised audiences in the neo-western The Rover, where he played an awkward criminal, and then in the adventure drama The Lost City of Z. There he transformed into a worn-out corporal who looked incredibly authentic. He consciously turned down leading roles and big paychecks in order to show that he was capable of more than constantly sparkling in romantic scenes. But there was one problem. Almost no one saw these films. Yes, critics praised his boldness and festivals talked about him, but to the wider public, Pattinson was still the same Edward. In Hollywood, he was seen as an actor who was burning through his popularity on art house experiments that never recouped their budgets. In other words, he risked acquiring a new stigma, the actor of box office flops. At that moment, he found himself on the edge. On one hand, independent roles helped him prove his skill, but on the other, they could completely destroy his career. What he needed was one project that would make everyone talk about his talent, not about the shadow of his past. And such a chance appeared. On a website, he accidentally stumbled upon a photo from an upcoming film by some brothers named Safdie. It was a neon-lit scene with an unknown actress. No other information, apart from the director's last name, but that was enough to spark his interest. Josh and Benny Safdie were true fanatics of street cinema. Their work looked as if the camera had accidentally found itself at the scene. No embellishments, no sets, with real people instead of extras. They filmed on the actual streets of New York, using hidden cameras and a minimal crew. For them, authenticity was what mattered most, even if it created major problems. Their early films were low budget and almost unknown outside a small circle of enthusiasts. But it was precisely the style that attracted Pattinson. When the brothers received a letter from a star of Twilight's caliber, at first they thought it was a joke. In their minds, Pattinson was a Hollywood prince who couldn't possibly know about their work. But not only did he know, he wanted to be part of their new project. At that time, the Safdies were trying to launch Uncut Gems, but due to lack of financing, they had been forced to postpone it. Pattinson's proposal became an unexpected gift. The problem, however, was different. He didn't fit the role they had originally planned. The script required a completely different type. So the brothers decided to create a new story specifically for Pattinson. That was how work began on the script for Good Time. The plot was inspired by real stories of street robbers and New York crime reports. Its foundation came from the diaries of one of the brothers' friends, Buddy Duress, who had a criminal past and ultimately played a part in the film himself. For the Safdies, it was a chance to make a brutally honest and raw film, and for Pattinson, an opportunity to become a completely different kind of actor. But his task was far more difficult than simply memorizing lines. The Safdie style demanded complete immersion into character. They created a detailed backstory for his character, Connie Nikas, from childhood to the events of the film. His appearance was also worked out in detail: an uneven sunburnt complexion, traces of fatigue, messy hair, worn-out clothes that looked as if he hadn't changed them in weeks. The key detail was an authentic New York accent. To achieve this, Pattinson decided to literally live his character's life. He rented a basement apartment in Queens and lived there in complete isolation for several months, almost always going out on the street already in character. He visited prisons, spoke with former criminals, recorded their stories, and practiced their accents. The Safdie brothers even set up training sessions for him on the streets. They filmed him walking around the city as Connie, testing whether he could go unnoticed. And the incredible happened: people didn't recognize him. This was exactly what he wanted, to dissolve into the role so completely that the audience would see only the character, not the star. But the difficulties didn't end there. The Safdies refused to give the script to the other actors. Only Robert and the directors knew the course of the story. The rest of the cast received only their characters' backstories and a few key hints. The rest they had to improvise. This made the scenes feel as alive as possible because the emotions weren't staged. But the main weight fell on Pattinson. He had to lead the scenes, pushing his partners in the right direction. Filming took place under extreme conditions. The brothers' favorite tactic was shooting without permits, right on the streets. For example, during a chase scene, the police really could have intervened, since the crew was blocking roads without authorization. In a shopping mall, they deliberately came on a day that wasn't approved so that nobody had time to prepare, which allowed them to capture genuine reactions from people. At times, passers-by even tried to help the police catch the characters. This method created chaos, but it was precisely what made the film feel real. For Pattinson, it became a trial by fire. He was not just playing a character, but essentially co-authoring every scene, because he had to balance between the script and the chaos of reality. He had to completely abandon Hollywood's rules of filmmaking, and within that lay the true magic. Good Time became a true test of strength for Robert Pattinson. At first glance, the plot seemed simple. Two brothers, Connie and Nick, carry out a failed bank robbery. Nick, who has intellectual disabilities, is caught and sent to prison, while Connie begins a desperate overnight odyssey trying to save him. This is the story of a brother willing to do anything, but whose methods only make the situation worse. Chaos follows his every step. He interferes in the lives of random people, destroys their fates, dragging them into his hopeless struggle. The brilliance of the film lay in the fact that the Safdies didn't show heroism, but rather the toxicity of love and the destructiveness of egoism. Connie, in words, cared about his brother, but in reality deprived him of the chance for real help. It was easier for him to see himself as a savior than to admit there were problems he could not solve. And it was precisely in this contradiction that Pattinson's talent emerged. He created a character who simultaneously evoked sympathy and repulsion, keeping the viewer on edge and forcing them to reflect on the nature of love and the destructiveness of selfishness. But the most important thing was how the film was received by audiences and critics. After its premiere in Cannes, the hall erupted in ovations. Viewers saw before them not the vampire from a romantic saga, but a mature actor capable of transforming beyond recognition. Critics called his performance one of the strongest of the year, comparing him to a young Robert De Niro. For the first time in many years, the headlines in the press spoke not about his relationships or his fans, but exclusively about his acting talent. For Hollywood, this was a signal. Pattinson was not just a franchise star, but a serious artist. And offers from major studios began to arrive on their own. At the same time, the careers of the Safdie brothers also soared. Their style was finally appreciated, and their next project, Uncut Gems, received financing 10 times greater than Good Time. Moreover, among the film's producers was none other than Martin Scorsese. For Pattinson, this film became a real springboard. He proved that he was ready to take risks, to work on the edge, and to break his own image. And the risk paid off. Good Time transformed him from a one-role victim into an actor closely watched, from whom audiences now expect bold, unexpected transformations. After Good Time, Robert Pattinson entered what he himself calls his second birth in cinema. He was no longer a hostage to the image of Edward. Hollywood now saw him as an actor capable of deep, contradictory, and complex roles. Directors who had once avoided him were now seeking out opportunities to work with him. His participation in Robert Eggers' The Lighthouse was further proof of his boldness. Side by side with Willem Dafoe, he plunged into the film's mad atmosphere, where the psyche of the characters unraveled before the audience's eyes. This work firmly established his reputation as an actor unafraid to experiment and to take part in projects bordering on the avant-garde. Next came his collaboration with Christopher Nolan in Tenet. And although the film received mixed reactions, for Pattinson it was a chance to prove himself in a large-scale blockbuster, but in a completely different role. He was now seen as a versatile artist, capable of carrying both complex dramatic and physically demanding performances in big-budget cinema. Finally, the culmination of this stage came with his role as Batman in Matt Reeves' film. When the news was announced, fans once again reacted cautiously, some even with ridicule. But Pattinson created one of the darkest and most psychologically complex Batmans in cinema history. His version of Bruce Wayne wasn't just another glossy image, but a fractured soul battling his own demons. And this became yet another confirmation that Pattinson was capable of breaking any stereotype. 2025, movie screens are once again exploding with discussions about Robert Pattinson. At the center of attention is a new project by Bong Joon-ho, the director who gave the world Parasite and won an Oscar. His new film Mickey 17 is a science fiction dystopia with dark humor, in which Pattinson once again proved that he is capable of breaking expectations with every role. For Pattinson, this role became the perfect platform. It allowed him to merge drama, irony, and absurdity. His Mickey is not a classic hero, but rather an anti-system figure, a man who looks at his own doom with sarcasm while desperately trying to prove that even disposable material has the right to individuality. At times he is funny, and others tragic, but always alive and unpredictable. For Pattinson, this role is a new turn in his career. He has long since proven that he can play strange, psychologically broken characters, but Mickey 17 is a chance to unite everything he has become. From a fearless experimenter in art house cinema to an actor who feels at home in large-scale blockbusters. In summary, Robert Pattinson's path is a story of how a single role can be both a blessing and a curse. But the main thing is not what role you get, but what you do with it afterward. He could have stayed in his comfort zone, enjoying money and fame, but he chose the fight. He risked his career, spent years working in independent cinema, proving to everyone, and above all to himself, that he was capable of more. And in the end, he proved it. Today, he is one of the most unpredictable actors of our time. His journey shows that labels in cinema are temporary, while the true value lies in talent, courage, and staying true to oneself. So, if you ever feel that one bad role or someone else's opinion can erase your dreams, remember Pattinson's story. If you enjoyed this video, don't forget to subscribe to the channel, hit like, leave a comment, and check out our other videos. There are many more incredible stories from the world of cinema ahead.